Good afternoon. I hope you've all enjoyed your lunch. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club and another of our Formula One lunches. It's great to see so many guests here. But if you would like to join this esteemed establishment, the home of intelligent conversation and witty banter, we have plenty of other events. You can.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean, he's quite good.
Can I just also say that if you want to become a member, you need to get recommended by somebody who then gets an amount of money they can spend on their bar bill. So if you want to go drinking with me, what you do is you ask me, I get the kickback, and then we go drinking together. Am I allowed to say that or not?
Yeah, actually, anything that promotes membership. So yeah, there is a card there that outlines everything, and you don't have to be a correspondent to join. So just to update you on a few upcoming events that we've got, October the 27th, we have a panel discussion at lunchtime. The far right, is it boosted by crypto and can it be stopped? Which is about, is it like Formula One or is it far removed? On November the 4th in the evening, we've got the club screening, Still Standing, a documentary covering the Sindhi community across the world. November the 5th, we have a book talk, Should the World Fear China, by Zhu Bo. And November the 6th, we have a club lunch where we will be welcoming Tyler Brule, the founder and chief editor-in-chief of Monocle magazine. November the 11th, well, bear this in mind, we have a screening of the film Zero to Macau on that Monday evening, which is a documentary about female racing driver Vivian Xu and how she ended up racing in the Macau Grand Prix. So that's another evening event that we'd like to see as many of you at as possible. Now, it's a great pleasure to welcome you back to what we always feel is one of our headline events, a visit by our old friend Matthew Marsh, well known to many of you and brings over 3 decades of motorsport experience as a driver, broadcaster, sponsor hunter, and brand partnership builder. And he's got an extensive knowledge of the Formula One paddock, and as well as a few forthright opinions, which he's going to air today. Matthew, it's a mere 50 days. First of all, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's a mere 50...
Actually, can I just thank you all for coming today, because I know it's busy midweek in Hong Kong, and it's great to see not only so many of you here, but friends old and new, and also a real mixture of people. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. We had one in Singapore about 10 days ago that, as I was telling a couple of friends over here, kind of broke out, and Tim was no longer moderating, and I wasn't really involved in the conversation, but it was fascinating. So,
so Matthew, let's get kicked off. I mean, it's a mere 50 days since Oscar Piastri was enjoying a 104-point lead in the Drivers' Championship over Max Verstappen, and we all felt it was a 2-horse race between him and his teammate Lando Norris. That gap is now evaporating, and the Dutchman's just 40 points behind, and a mere 26 behind Norris. 5 Grand Prix, 2 sprint races to go. Momentum seems to clearly be with Verstappen. Are McLaren paying the price for stopping development of this year's car and not prioritizing one driver over another? And is basically the knowledge that Verstappen and Red Bull have of winning titles, is that now coming into play?
yes.
Next weekend, have McLaren got anything up their sleeve?
That's the little joke we just did about short answers. What was the question again? No, I think we've all been watching it, I guess, and I think what started out as a really good idea, with obviously very good intentions, this is McLaren managing the rivalry that's going to exist between 2 top-line drivers, is now, the week after the American Grand Prix, the US Grand Prix, there's a colourful word for it, but it's a mess, isn't it? It's a cluster. And I don't think it's going to get any better. And you know that phrase about the road to, was it? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yeah. I think that's very...
My life.
Yeah, exactly. Tim used to sponsor me when I was racing, so he knows a lot of things. And so did Richard. Thank you very much for your hard work. That was 20 years ago. But anyway, I think it's a mess, unfortunately. But it's good for us because we're going to have a really exciting, final 5 races and 2 sprints.
So this is like 2007 when Alonso, Hamilton at McLaren seemed to be able to shoot themselves in the foot fairly easily.
Yeah.
And Raikkonen came up from behind and snatched it at the end. I mean, have there been any lessons learned? I mean, is it a mistake to have two such competitive individuals? Red Bull are obviously benefiting from being a one-car team.
Yeah. I think, okay, just a couple of steps back, right? So, I mean, I think McLaren have been in this situation before a number of times, and there's a sort of Senna-Prost 1989-90, I think it was, when the rivalry exploded in such a way that one of the guys left, Prost went to Ferrari and was then a competitor to the McLaren team, and it was damaging and so on. So they, okay, let's try and avoid that scenario. And then there was the 2007 one that you just mentioned, 18 years ago, which, by the way, was the last time Ferrari won a world championship, which tells you a lot as well, when the two McLaren drivers, Fernando Alonso, already a double world champion, Lewis Hamilton in his debut year, fought so hard for the championship that they managed to lose it to Kimi Räikkönen. And it's also quite similar because the point system was different then, but roughly speaking, I think he had a 17-point disadvantage. Räikkönen at the greatest point, which is about 45 now. This is kind of sort of the situation we're in now with Verstappen. And going into the last race, it was 7 points, which is like, no way Räikkönen's going to win. 7 points is now 17, I think, if you just do 25 for a win now versus 10 for a win then. So it's not dissimilar. And the McLaren guys have managed so far not to get ugly with each other. But I think either they get ugly or they don't get ugly, but it's still going to be messy because it's going to be very hard to manage.
So you used to work with Zach Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, you know his management style. What's he going to be doing, sitting down with these two guys, saying, have a bar of chocolate? Or?
He's going to be, he starts the day with a big coffee, and I think he's going to be biting his fingernails and thinking, we were trying to avoid this very situation. He's a scholar of the sport. I mean, his collection of historic racing cars is impressive. It's because he knows the history of the sport. He knows this narrative. That's why he would have wanted to avoid this. I think, I'm not pinning the blame on, but I can see that the engineer of this is probably more likely the team principal, Andrea Stella, who is himself an engineer, and I'm saying that because he's more likely to see the answer through a sort of framework of, okay, this is, this papaya rules. Maybe it should have been called papaya kind of guidelines, because should we just dig into it a little bit? We could go back a long way, but if we just look at what happened in Singapore and then what happened in Austin. In Singapore, the number one rule is don't drive into each other. Okay, that's fine. Lando drove into the back of Oscar at the Canadian Grand Prix, but took himself out, didn't take Oscar out. So, okay, then not good, but didn't ultimately do Oscar any damage. So the only person upset is McLaren for losing constructors' points and Lando. Okay, but in Singapore, Lando bumped into Oscar. And it's not good, it's not ideal, but it is the first corner. It does happen in racing. I mean, every race we see people bumping into somebody else, and sometimes their teammates. The consequences, they've called it this, that Lando has to pay, as I understand it, and nobody outside McLaren knows in detail, but as I understand it, the idea is that as a consequence of that, Oscar then gets the choice of whether he runs first or second in the final qualifying session. He could get a tow, or choose not to get the tow. Okay, fine. And apparently till the end of the season, which to me seems like quite a significant consequence, 6 races and then 3 sprint races. Well, okay, fair enough. Maybe they were thinking Oscar's leading the World Championship, actually not bad for us if we give, I don't know what they were thinking exactly, but you can see how in a box, okay, not a bad idea. The consequence of it was, maybe, that Lando didn't get pole position from Max for the sprint race. He qualified second. Maybe he would have qualified second, but certainly by hampering him, they didn't help him beat Max. So they lined up for the sprint race, Verstappen with Lando, and into the first corner, there's a schmozzle, as we know. Hulkenberg gets hit by whoever, and into Piastri turns back, gets hit by Hulkenberg. Piastri takes out his own teammate, not directly, but indirectly. So now what's the consequence? So are they going to say to Piastri, you took out both of our team cars, so we're not going to let you do qualifying? So you see my point here, which is a long ramble, but my point was a very small thing which is let's try and make sure the drivers calm down, has resulted in them losing any points out of the sprint race, not getting that hour of racing, but running to prepare for qualifying for the Grand Prix, qualifying also second for the Grand Prix, which meant that they got overtaken by Charles Leclerc and finished third. And it goes on, and now they're going to have a conversation before Mexico about what the consequences are of the consequences. I'm just glad I'm not running that team.
I mean, you talked there about turn one, and prior to the American Grand Prix, I mean, George Russell was quoted as saying, I thought that before the race, wherever we exited turn one, that would be the place where we finished. And the McLaren principal, Andrea Stella, he said that if Norris had not dropped behind Leclerc at the first corner, he could have challenged Verstappen for the win. So we've got one of the top drivers in the world and the world Constructors' Champion team principal effectively saying it's all over by the first corner. I mean, that's not a great endorsement of the quality of racing, is it?
Max Verstappen once famously said, probably more than once, if my mother had balls, she'd be my father, which is his way of saying, don't give me these if questions. Because if Max Verstappen had been third on the grid, there's a good chance he would have overtaken Leclerc earlier than did Lando Norris, I would wager. Who would agree with me on that, right? So, it's kind of always been this difficult for the racing, but we're kind of we're crossing over between two stories here. There's the Lando is very, very quick, super brave, sometimes half asleep. The restart in Azerbaijan. Why? The restart I haven't got to the bottom of what happened in Austin. He was about a second behind when they did that restart, and then it was 2 seconds, and no one seemed to be talking about it. If Max Verstappen was doing it, he would have known exactly what the time difference was, and he would have made sure it was that or less at the restart. So it's not only about the cars being difficult.
So what you're saying is that Verstappen is clearly the best.
Yeah.
And then operationally, Red Bull are probably still ahead of McLaren in terms of their execution.
I think there's two sides to that. The first thing is, actually, at the talk, I don't know, who was here in April at the talk? Obviously I was, but I'm just doing to show. I'd like to see a raise of hands. Who was here in April? Okay, so we were talking about this, and I had been at the Shanghai Grand Prix and was talking to a few people like Mark Webber, who manages Oscar Piastri, and talking about Max Verstappen, and about how actually in this season, even by Shanghai, it's going to be a tough year. This is a season for Max's reputation to shift. So I'll ask you now, who thinks Max Verstappen can win the World Championship this year? Who wants to see him win the World Championship this year? Because that's kind of Formula One. I mean, I think Formula One, we like to support the underdog. Okay, sometimes the Dutch want to support Verstappen and the Brits want to support Lewis, maybe, but I think most of us want to see the underdog come through, and Max is now the underdog, and it's a great story. The reason I'm telling that story is that we talked about the fact that Max is now the best in the world, by far, never has a bad weekend, is not only winning the races he's supposed to win, he's winning the races he's not supposed to win. He's nicking those wins from the others, as we described earlier, right? And we posted it on Instagram. It's had hundreds of thousands of views because it's an Englishman speaking well about a Dutch driver, which is great. That's what it's all about. But what I think it's also about is that Max is, for the first time since Michael Schumacher, there is a driver who's clearly dominant over everybody else and is calling the shots, really, of his own team, but also, and we'll talk later on about the Mercedes drivers, he decides who's going to go and race where, basically, because he decides first where he wants to race. And that's the first bit. The second bit is, I think McLaren, it'll come out in the wash later, but maybe McLaren stopped developing their 2025 car earlier than did Red Bull. There are reasons for that. One of them is that, as you may know, there are what they call the resource restriction agreement, is that the more successful you are, the less time you get with the computers and the wind tunnels that help you design your car. So the championship, fifth place gets 100%, and the guys in P1 get whatever it is, 80%, I think it is. And Red Bull finished third in the championship last year, so they've got about 10%, I think, more. But it's significant, especially when you're going into 2026, completely new cars, completely new aero, and the teams are thinking, well, you need to get on with designing that. We've got limited resources. So I think probably McLaren thought, we've got this, a risk-adjusted basis. They weren't being cocky, but on a risk-adjusted basis, let's start applying for 2026. Because also in 2026, we're going to continue to have Mercedes engines, which, again, looking at history, should be good, at least equal to anybody else. And in a rule change, they sometimes, as in 2014, go ahead. So let's do that. Whereas Red Bull, on the other hand, you can see we're probably thinking, we're making our own power unit for the very first time with Ford, who haven't done anything in F1 for 20 years. So 26 might be a wash anyway. Let's go for it now, which is a good lesson in Formula One, by the way, is if you can win it now, because who knows? This goes back to the Max Verstappen, if my mother.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, you mentioned earlier Mark Webber. Yeah. He is Piastri's manager. Way back, he sort of got the bum end of the Red Bull situation, and he was leading the championship almost at the end. I mean, what guidance will he be giving Piastri? I mean, Piastri is only in his third season. What expertise would you expect Webber, who's a very down-to-earth, knowledgeable, incredibly experienced, multiple Grand Prix winner, what will he be bringing to his young charge?
I saw Mark in Singapore, and I was talking to him, and somebody came over and said, "Great work with Oscar," or something. He said, "I've done nothing." And that's really important, right? He's not taking any credit for the work he's doing. Obviously, he's helping. But the fact that his ego is under the table and is very important. I think he's got a difficult challenge because on one side, he wants to say, take every single point you possibly can. Do not allow any of this team orders nonsense. But he can't, if the team have agreed, as at Monza, it was agreed that in certain circumstances, Oscar would have to give back the position. That circumstance arose, which was that Lando was ahead before the pit stop. It was agreed that Oscar could stop early, but only if it wasn't an undercut. It became an undercut because of a slow pit stop, give the position back. He had to do it. If he hadn't, he could have not done it. There are people in the past who wouldn't have done it, Max Verstappen being one of them, Michael Schumacher and so on. But it then just sets the tone for how you're going to go forward. He might look back and think, that was the day I should have set the tone. But that isn't actually his problem. His problem is he's not winning races and he's running slower. And
yeah, has he lost his mojo?
Well, okay, the mojo is, I think it was 0.3 of a second in...
Yeah, not a lot.
This is the other thing I think that's important for us to recognise. It's very hard to understand. What's 0.3 of a second? I don't know. What's the blink of an eyelid? I don't know. You might know, Kimberly. Kimberly works in the sleep business, but she's studying me talking as a... Yeah, there you go. So I think that in the Hungarian Grand Prix, half a second covered the top 10 in qualifying. It's one of the closest ever. I think George Russell was saying, as you said earlier in Austin, 0.3 of a second covered the top 6 or something like that. And so therefore, what is it that makes the difference of a 1/10 of a second that could mean, if he was a 1/10 of a second quicker in qualifying, he would have been on the front row. And what is that? Is it releasing the steering wheel slightly earlier? Is it, conversely not getting on the throttle early and avoiding that wheel spin that slightly overheats the tyres and, it's all knock-on effect? I can't remember the question.
Don't worry. Let's move on to something that we talked about when you were last here because, well, actually, yeah, last year. And it was sort of dominating the front page of the tabloids and everything, which was all of the trauma going on in the management of Red Bull. Has their resurgence been purely down to the change in management since the departure of Christian Horner? And is the atmosphere in the team different now? And Horner says he's going to be back again in April. Where's he going to end up?
Okay, so the factual thing that we know is that Red Bull have introduced, in particular, 2 things on their car that have transformed it from being not very good, finishing 9th at the Hungarian Grand Prix to now being probably at the quickest-ish. I mean, we know so they're thereabouts. And those are a new floor, good, but also a new front wing, which is flexible to some degree. They're all somewhat flexible. There's a regulation on how much and how little you can do. It's obviously legal, so that's not the lawyers in the room, Nigel. But the point about a flexible front wing is at low speeds, you want the front to grip, so you get into the corner, you get the corner done quickly. Oddly, the slow corners are often the most important because they take longer. So if you can be 10% faster in a corner that takes 5 seconds, that's quicker than being 10% quicker in a corner that takes 2 seconds. So you want a wing that gets but unfortunately, as you go faster, that means that the center of pressure continues to go more and more forward, and the car's very unstable. I hope my movements are helping you understand that. So if you've got a flexible front wing, the idea is you get that turn in and the car can rotate quickly, but as the car gets faster and faster, the front wings flex back and the center of pressure goes rearward, and then the car's actually nice and stable through the high-speed corners. That's what they've achieved again. And we can see that because not only is Max winning, but Yuki Tsunoda, who you might not have realized was racing in Formula 1 in 2025. Well, really, come on. But he's actually started to score, I was going to say points, but certainly point. And, he's still 0.8 of a second or whatever. He's still a long way off Max, and he's, P45. He's out of there by the end of the year, right? But it's obviously a much easier car to drive or a better car to drive. So that's the first point, is that they've made the car better, right? And maybe it's because McLaren stopped earlier, Red Bull carried on pushing, they got this point. Is that down to the change in leadership and Christian going and Mecchia's coming in, who is an engineer? You can imagine that in a management conversation, if you're an engineer, you're more likely to encourage the engineers to be confident about trying things, sharing their ideas, fixing the problem. And maybe previously they were, this is who made this, I don't know. And I think the general idea is that we don't know, but it hasn't made it any worse. And one of the problems at Red Bull isn't just that Christian Horner went, is that they all went. Adrian Newey, the designer guy who's gone to McLaren, whose name's escaping me, and Wheatley's gone to Audi. I mean, all the good guys is the wrong word for it, but all the key leadership people have gone. There's many, many great people in the team, but a lot of them have left as well. So,
you mentioned there Adrian Newey, and he's gone to Aston Martin, and some people are saying that Christian Horner will end up there. Aston Martin, luxury brand, I mean, you know, been bust 9 times. How does that compare with, say, Ferrari and their performance? I mean, Ferrari has been a massive disappointment this year.
I think we should give a round of applause to the segues that Tim is giving here, because I think the way he's managed to, I forget what the question is, you probably forget what I'm saying, and he's managed to somehow. Adrian Newey, and Ferrari. I think there's a couple of things I think is interesting here. One is that Ferrari, if we can remember last year, this time last year, they just finished 1-2 in the American Grand Prix. They were going to finish 1-3 at Mexico. I think Carlos Sainz won in Mexico and third was Charles Leclerc. They finished third and fourth, I think, in Las Vegas. So they scored more points than McLaren in the last 10 races of the year. They narrowly lost the Constructors' Championship to McLaren. No, they were on the up. And then they signed Lewis Hamilton. It's all go. And I think from talking to people, you know, close to the team in Singapore, the view was they came into this season thinking they were going to win. And so it's been a bit of a shock. And no, I'd kind of forgotten that was what the atmosphere was. Yeah, good point. And then the other problem is, from, again, people who are adjacent to the team, they seem to be okay with that. As in, they're not annoyed enough, they're not Red Bull enough about, we've got to solve this, we've got to do everything we can. It's like, we'll just keep doing the plan and it'll, you know, but it won't solve it. As the person said to me, they think just keep executing the run plan, and by the way, executing it very badly, is going to solve the problem, and it's not. So there is, and it's the most, you know, more than one person has said to me that's the biggest disappointment of 2025 for Ferrari fans, but also Formula One fans, because we want to see them in the mix. They didn't need Lewis Hamilton. They needed Adrian Newey. Because if the cars are that close together, you need to have the one that's the best, and then you need to have Max Verstappen driving it, right? Ideally. But you need the Adrian Newey car, probably. And so they didn't get that, so I think they got that completely wrong. The guy who got Adrian Newey is Lawrence Stroll at Aston Martin. Wow. I was thinking about this from a M&A point of view. Because one of the key reasons that Adrian went to Aston Martin, I think, is that he's a shareholder in the team now. It changes the dynamic, right? You've got skin in the game. If you think about it from an M&A point of view, basically it was a cash and stock transaction. They acquired Adrian Newey, and they acquired it for if it's 2.5%, which is the number that's being banded around, the 2.5% dilution of the Aston Martin F1 team value, it's nothing, right? If they win the World Championship, the value is going to go up 25%. So you just pure metrics. Yeah, give this one guy who's won more championships than any other chief designer, definitely give him 2.5%. Give him whatever he wants. Because if we win, then great. And if we don't, well, nothing changes. We're still a team that's not winning Grand Prix. So.
Right. Okay. So this summer.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah. No. Great answer. I mean.
I think he was working on his next segue there.
Yeah, which is actually we're now going to sort of branch off that road.
Oh, branch.
I mean, in addition to all the racing that was going on in the real world over the summer, we also had the launch of the F1 movie, which was pretty huge. I mean, it's made 630 million at the box office, and it was quite a draw in terms of getting new fans interested. What was the view of the movie inside the paddock? I mean, was it a fair representation of the sport?
Well, first of all, who's seen the movie? Obviously, I have. So is that 60%, 70% of the room? Who's seen it more than once? Who has seen it 3 times in 1 week? Here? Oh, 2 of you, okay. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have seen it.
When did you see it?
I saw it soon after it came out in Hong Kong.
You went with a notebook and you...
No, I didn't go with a notebook. I actually went with a group of friends.
Group of friends?
Yeah.
A group of friends?
Okay. Some of whom are here.
Someone's being a little bit...
All right, well, I went with 5 ladies, okay?
Okay. No one likes a show-off, Tim.
As you
Remember
do.
that. Yeah.
And some of whom had never been to a Formula One race.
No.
And
or out
some
with you,
had,
probably.
Yeah, probably, because they didn't want to go out with me. Yeah, they haven't been out with me. But also, and didn't necessarily have a strong interest in it. But they all got a bit of a buzz out of it. One of them over there has been to a Formula One race subsequently. Barbara now fully understands F1.
Good.
Yeah. So it works in terms of what it was aiming to do.
Yes. What was the question? Yes. So I think...
What did the people in the business think about it?
I mean, it's the largest grossing sports movie of all time.
Yeah.
Which sounds amazing. I actually don't know what the other one would be. And maybe, what's the second one? Or is it really? Oh, yeah, good point. I thought about that. Okay. Which is a sort of similar plot line to the F1 movie. I mean, I think the thing about it is, I went in knowing this is a Hollywood movie, and it's got 2 intentions. One is to be successful and make money, and the second is to increase interest in Formula One and drive people from being not interested to being followers. Not necessarily viewers of the Grand Prix, but being, to some degree, followers. Maybe some, only 1% of the fans can get to a Grand Prix, which is a thing that a lot of the teams now are trying to engage with. So it's fine. I thought it was super successful. I also thought what was interesting about it was what they didn't include in the story. Because that is, I think, instructive, because this is very successful movie makers, particularly with an eye to the US audience. They know what's going to be interesting and not to themselves and to those people. And they didn't touch qualifying. It's not a mistake. They didn't do it, didn't realize. They weren't only filming on Sundays. They didn't do it because to them it wasn't necessary in the story. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Actually, I mean, who does watch qualifying? Yeah, well, we're Formula One fans. We like to see it. Who watches FP1? Yeah. You can get help for that now. It's called the Sprint Weekend. And the Sprint Weekend, I hadn't really realized this. So Singapore's going to have a Sprint Weekend next year. And I thought, that's interesting, because Singapore's sold out, and why? And then I realized it's not actually about the Saturday, it's about the Friday. Because the Sprint Weekend, of course, there's a race now on Saturday, but it means that Friday has a qualifying session. It has something. And apparently, the TV audience is up sort of 15% across the weekend for races that have, which is not insignificant if you're paying a fee, a hosting fee. But also, if Friday now becomes a thing for the Singapore Grand Prix, otherwise people tend to maybe, the corporations that have tickets will give away those. It increases the value of everything. So,
and the amount Formula One can charge.
Well, cynical, Tim. Yeah, I mean, it pays for everything that we see them doing. Yeah. So I thought it was super successful. I think the people in the paddock have a very similar view. Everybody I've spoken to is like, yeah, I mean, obviously, that couldn't really happen, some of that stuff. But I thought the way they told the story of some of the things, I mean, the bit that I remember is Brad Pitt losing his nose, his wing, and going, my bad, on the radio, because I laughed out loud, and I thought that's kind of funny, right? I mean, it's sort of ludicrous, but it's not entirely ridiculous. And I think one of the important things that the producers have said is everything that happened in that movie has happened in real life. Maybe not in Formula One, it was in the big crash at Monza where the car went in the air was in Formula 3. But, they didn't make up things, they just embellished, and it was a good story. I laughed. I didn't cry.
Okay, great. So that
Hang on, I think the best racing movie of all time is The Art of Racing in the Rain. Who's seen that?
Yeah, and read the book.
Have you?
Yeah.
Only 2 of us, 3 of us. Okay, you've got to see The Art, you haven't got to, but The Art of Racing in the Rain is brilliant because the motor racing is actually in the background. It's the story of, it's a love story, it's told by a golden Labrador.
Yeah, it's told from the viewpoint of a dog.
Which is brilliant.
Which is great.
And it's really realistic, so I would recommend that very highly.
Right, okay, that's a bit of a distraction there. Yeah. Now then, the movie, as you say, really raised awareness, and now you've got more countries wanting a race than ever. And I mean, Bangkok, Seoul, people even talk about Hong Kong being on the radar. What are the prospects of further growth in Asia? I mean, we had Vietnam and that didn't happen.
Well, Vietnam almost happened. Yeah. This is one of the things I find quite interesting is, how stories get rewritten. I'm slightly careful sitting in Hong Kong saying that, but you get my point. In Vietnam, the Grand Prix was ready to go. The circuit was built. And it was going to be the week after the Australian Grand Prix, which was the first Grand Prix to be cancelled. It was going to happen a week later. And if it had happened, it would have, I think, continued. But because it didn't, it got postponed. The political thing happened. The guy who was leading it, the key man, which I'll come back to as a theme in a second, the key man who was sort of the mayor of Hanoi, had to go away for a while due to some accusations. And as I said to somebody, were the accusations true, or did he get too big for his boots? Yes. It's like, okay. So it's a shame about Vietnam, because I think it would have been amazing. Hanoi is a brilliant city, great country, all those things. Right, so we do need an extra race in Asia. I think the business would do well. Let's talk about Bangkok, because last time we were here, Bangkok was there, pole position to happen. And almost as some cynical people who've been in the region for a while might have predicted, Thailand would sort of shoot itself in the foot a bit. Hopefully not totally. But back in April, it was, okay, they're shooting for 27, but it should definitely happen by 28. In my opinion, they'd done everything the right way, which was that smart people had engaged the right people to come to Formula One with a oven-ready project. They demonstrated to Formula One, hey, you know all these people, you recognize them, you trust them, they've got credibility, and they've done the piece of work that says, we understand how much it costs, we understand the logistics. The amount of space that you need for the paddock is, I think, 25,000 square meters. The length of the straight, the runoff areas, the logistics. Formula One wants, for new Grand Prix, 75% of the people arriving to come by public transport. They want that for all sorts of reasons, including sustainability. So the Thai F1 project people did it exactly the right way. They engaged with F1 at the right moment, built the momentum, everything brilliant. And then the government changed, and all those people have gone. The Prime Minister's gone, apparently all the key ministers are gone, and they hadn't yet got it past, So my understanding, as I believe is true, is it was ready to go, it hadn't got passed, now they have to get it passed. New people who are probably focused on other things. There's some rumors of an election next year and da-da-da-da. So and the problem, I think, is two things. I think it could be amazing from knowing the people involved. I think it could be incredible. And F1 wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't, because they've got too many incredible people on the queue. And if it doesn't happen, Seoul is next up. And Seoul isn't as well polished as I understand it, from the little I know of the Seoul project. But if Thailand gets itself down the cul-de-sac, then I think Seoul would be amazing. It would be great. It could be great. I just think it'd be a shame if Bangkok doesn't happen.
Right, let's open this up.
Sorry, can I just one more thing? Because whenever we talk about that, Hong Kong comes up and somebody says, we should have a Grand Prix in Hong Kong. That'd be great. But the reason I mentioned the key man was that in Vietnam, there was a key man, and he got the right people around him. And in Bangkok, there was somebody who got to the key people and convinced them. He's in this room. And he made it happen and brought in all those other credible people and made the project happen. And I think in Hong Kong, it starts with you have to have that person in government or in power who then says, let's do this, and has the vision to say, actually, it's a bargain. I live in Singapore where I kind of do it for fun. I say to the taxi drivers, wow, busy week, right? No, not really. Okay. This is the Grand Prix week. It's not busy this week. And I know it is because the Grab prices have doubled. And all my friends are complaining they can't get restaurant reservations. I'm like, oh, it's not busy. But what about the F1? Oh, so trouble. Why is it? Surely it's no. And they just complain about everything. And I get it. I mean, I kind of get it. But what I was saying to somebody at the local radio, asking me about economic impact, and I said, can we press pause on economic impact? Because the numbers you can prove any day you want, that the cost of hosting a Grand Prix, whatever it is, 100 million, whatever, really, to have your city on the stage to show that you can host a Grand Prix. And then it hit me. What about if they actually said internally to Singaporeans, and any nation, I'm just using Singapore because I live there, how proud do you feel about the fact that your nation puts on one of these 24 only in the world and executes it so much so that Martin Brundle, who chooses first at Sky, I think, which 16 races he wants to do, Singapore. You can see the people that aren't at Singapore are the ones that don't get to choose first. By contrast, other races, won't name any, Martin doesn't go to, right? So Sochi used to be a good example, right? That's the thing, the pride, and what's the economic impact of people in a country feeling proud of their nation? It's a lot, so.
Just to add on to that, I mean, one of the things about Singapore, and indeed a lot of Formula One races, is about the amount of dead time during an event. I mean, Formula One race, 90 minutes long. Singapore has really pioneered the whole concert gig and everything. I mean, and you rushed from the paddock to see Elton John. And I mean, I don't often see you rushing off to see 80-year-old men that often. But it was...
Stay quiet, right?
but should there be
so
more...
many have joined us, haven't they?
Should there be more action during a Grand Prix weekend? I mean, in the 70s and 80s, the support bill at the British Grand Prix included, top-level Formula 3 race, celebrity race, sports car race. I mean, and then you had sort of great one-make series like BMW Pro Car. I mean, is there enough going on, considering the amount of money that it costs to attend the Grand Prix?
It's very expensive now. I think, again, there's sort of two parts to this. Who's been to Singapore Grand Prix? Good, 50%. Who went to see a concert as well? Less than half of that. So I've been every year to Singapore. I had never been to a concert before this year, and had never stood trackside. I'd always been working in a, So I did those two things this year. The concert I went to with Elton John was probably one of the best concerts. That Padang stage, they call it, with the amazing. I have to say, I stood there thinking, wow, I can see why people want to have a Grand Prix in Bangkok or in Hong Kong. I thought, I'm really glad I've lived here for a few years so I can understand what this means, the scale. I think it was 65,000 people singing along to Rocket Man. That's really impressive. And people that were going, and some of them came down from Hong Kong who went to see the concerts, and then they'll catch a bit of the boring cars going around. But that's kind of so the first point is I think the concerts are really important, making it a festival, making people come to the Grand Prix. And in this room, where most of us are fans more than not, I think we're bound to probably go and watch the racing more than the concerts. But I think a lot of people would say, what's Formula 2? Why is it significant to me? I don't know the characters. It's a bit like, MotoGP has been also taken over by Liberty. As we know, the idea is to re-energize it. I think for a lot of people, I don't know who the stars are in MotoGP. That's one of their challenges. The World Endurance Championship and Le Mans is amazing. I went to Le Mans again this year for the second time. Incredible racing. But if you don't know who the people are driving the car, do you really care? And I think that's the thing about Formula One. And we know who Elton John is, so yeah, I did rush.
Let's throw this open to the floor. Yes. We will bring you a microphone on the veranda. Do you want me to come?
Hello, Nigel Sharman, Associate Member. So what about Lewis? He said publicly that he doesn't think he's as quick as he should be, that he used to be. So what is he in it for? Why does he keep going?
Fashion.
There's a book that Nigel's writing over a 10-year period of comments about Lewis. Thank you for the questions. Lewis, I think one of Lewis's superpowers, which you'll see with many great athletes and business people, is being self-critical. He's always been that way. When he's had a bad day, you can see him thinking, what did I get wrong there? Even if it was, I didn't tell the team which tyres to put the car on. I think that was what you were referring to, Nigel, I think was probably Hungarian Grand Prix time, kind of July-ish. I think, again, from the conversations I had in Singapore with people close to Lewis, I think there's a realization that that's not going to be helpful. That's his natural way. Don't blame them, blame me, especially on the cameras. And then I can do... I think that he realizes now, no, we need to focus on the problems that the team has, which aren't massive. It's so competitive, but... So I think we see, he's kind of there and thereabouts sometimes with Charles.
He's not in the mix, though, is he?
Then the Ferrari isn't in the mix either, is it?
Well, true.
They didn't get Adrian Newey.
They didn't get Adrian Newey. So...
But I mean, if you're not in the mix, if you're being referred to en passant by the Sky people, is that where you want to be, being Lewis Hamilton?
No, I think it is. If you have, it's like, let's use Christian Horner as an example. Christian Horner, since 2005, every day he's in the UK. He's in Milton Keynes in the factory. Every race, I can't remember a weekend that he didn't do. I mean, there were a couple, but basically, imagine now his life. And hey, I'm enjoying some time off. No, he's not. He can't be. His body is physiologically going to react to not being interviewed and not being... that's unfair, but well, no, it's not. It's accurate. But it's also, right? So Lewis will be the same. Suddenly retire when actually what he loves doing is driving racing cars and being part of a team of dedicated people. I think I think he'll probably carry on too long, Nigel. Maybe that's already, or maybe it's 2 years.
Out the back there.
Liam Lawson, what's his future, and what about the other rookies this year?
Sheep farming?
I don't think he's done enough. I think he was badly treated by Red Bull. I mean, we talked about it, you know, they keep doing it, they keep promoting drivers, they gave Liam no time, they didn't give him any proper preparation. Kimi Antonelli had thousands of kilometers and I think 2 written off cars in preparation for driving for Mercedes, and he wasn't finished by then, was he? And Liam had done bits and pieces of racing and jumped in, had 2 races and was given the elbow, and you know, we've seen what's happened subsequently. I think he might survive for next year with the team because they don't, because Yuki's in the position with the red light. He's got that red laser light, hasn't he? He's out. You know, there are 25 million good reasons why they might want to keep him for this year. I mean, he's not bad, and I think he should have been in the Red Bull from the beginning of the year, especially with the 25 million good reasons from Honda. But with the Honda reasons gone, and he's not doing a good enough job, why wouldn't you put Isaac Hadjar, which is kind of the open secret now? Then Liam stays there, and Arvin Lindblad probably. I guess it's nothing that you haven't read. He's doing a FP. Well, okay, that's interesting. What you got me thinking about is Arvin Lindblad is doing FP1 in Max's car at Mexico, because now each full-time driver has to be replaced by a rookie twice during the season. It's great, gives the rookies a chance to shine.
In a
free practice. Yeah, exactly, sorry, in a free practice 1. But this is really important because Lindblad's driving Max's car on a really important weekend in free practice. And if anything happens to that car, yeah, I think something happens to Lindblad. But I mean,
but at the same time, he's got to make an impression.
That's it. He's there in job interview. So think about Lindblad on Friday.
At the back there, yep.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I've got a couple of questions relating to Mercedes. Firstly, Russell, who I personally think is the second best driver. Would you have signed
after Lewis or who?
Would you have signed a 1-year contract if you were George, or multi-year if you had the choice? And secondly, what's your views on Antonelli?
So I'm sort of with you. I think he's sort of second equal. Leclerc, I don't know who I'd go else with, but Lando maybe, but not really. Piastri maybe. Yeah, okay. So second, third best, right? He's managed. He's part of the Mercedes driver management program, which is a problem when you're negotiating against Mercedes, because it's got to the point now where he is. If he was the 10th best driver, okay, it's still good to have. You know, I'm part of their stable, so they're going to favour me. Now I think it's a problem. He's a passenger. If you're Toto Wolff at Mercedes, you would do what he has done, which is try to get Max Verstappen, because it's worth those race wins you shouldn't get, and probably a 1/10 of a second or more a lap, and everything else, tens of millions of dollars. And so you would say to George, I can only offer you a 1-year contract. Why? Because I want the option at the end of 26. And if I can get Max, I'll get Max, and then I'll choose between you and Kimi or whoever. I'm running a corporation, and kind of, if you don't like it, then you need to go somewhere else. I don't want you to go somewhere else. I'll offer you, I imagine George is going to get paid really well for 26, actually really well for the option that is that they can replace him for 27. And George has to say to himself, I need to get out of the Mercedes situation at some point, so maybe that's in the negotiation, that if he gets flicked, he gets out of that. I need to be in the best, number one, I need to be in the best car all the time, which is, people have forgotten that, haven't they, in racing? You know better than most people, Mike. You know, Damon Hill should have done everything he could to stay in the Williams after winning the World Championship. And so I think he's probably thinking, yeah, it's not ideal, but if I'm in the Mercedes in 26, I've got a pretty good chance of winning the World Championship. And going back to what we said, you know, unlikely Mercedes would fire a world champion. They'd have to fire the other guy. So yeah, back yourself. So Antonelli, promoted too early. I think you told me this earlier, that and I'm repeating back to you what you said to me, that they were worried about losing him to Red Bull. I think you're right. I think it was just too early. The guy's too young.
But then it's exactly the same as what happened with Verstappen. And Wolff lost out because Dr. Marco got Verstappen into the second Red Bull team. I mean,
Yeah.
didn't he just have to seize the opportunity
and
when he's seen as the
Yeah.
generational talent?
And the other side is you could say, I mean, what I was saying there was on its own in a box, right? It was too early. But on the other hand, it's 2025. They probably weren't going to win the World Championship. Let's get the guy ready. If he's good enough, we've got him for 26 and he's ready to race. So better than the alternatives. Sorry, except for Carlos Sainz. They could have taken Carlos Sainz. And I think Carlos was looking for a 2-year deal. And that was one of the reasons. But again, yeah. That's what I was thinking. And then
Down at the front here, please.
Thank you, Timothy. Matthew, 2 questions. What do you make, speaking of the films, what do you make of the film Rush from 2013? And the second question, what do you make of Apple pushing into Formula 1? Thank you.
Thank you. So the Rush movie that Alexi's mentioning was 1976 World Championship between Hunt and Lauda. It's a great story. There's a really good BBC documentary called Hunt versus Lauda. If you can find it on YouTube, I recommend it. It's really good. I thought the movie was not as good as the F1 movie by quite a long way. I didn't actually enjoy it that much. I thought it was okay. I thought the main character was too good looking. Yeah, there you go, exactly, more than one. It's ridiculous. The honest reason is I got completely hung up on the fact that they had the wrong badge on Hunt's overalls. That's why I was a teen. I loved James Hunt. So what was the other question? Apple, Formula One.
Yep.
This is really interesting because Formula One, since the Liberty takeover 2017, has doubled its TV audience, and it's one of the success metrics, right? And there's now about 1.5 million people watching Formula One currently on ESPN. And I spoke to James Allen, who some of you might remember was the commentator for the BBC and ITV, especially in 2008 when Lewis won the World Championship. He said, yeah, we had 1.5 million viewers on ESPN when I was covering Ayrton Senna. Now, it's not to say that there hasn't been growth. The point he was making was that's when ESPN was available to almost everybody. Almost everybody had cable. So I think that's quite an important point, is I think what Formula One's trying to do is make it easier to access. But the other side of the coin here is there's this tension between, do we try and increase the fan base, I should call it the viewer base? And if the answer was yes, then you'd make it free to air in India, maybe. Versus, but we have to generate revenue that pays for all of this stuff we're doing, including the future growth of the sport. And I think that it's only struck me recently that actually the Formula One's job is to run the business today and in the next few years. And yes, they need to be strategic, but they can't be strategic about everything. So it's my way of saying I don't really know how that's going to work out in the US, but part of me realizes that whilst there's 827 million fans by the last count, there's less than half that number of unique viewers, which tells us a lot, which is that, well, okay, who watches more than half the Grand Prix in a year? Yeah, but we're F1 fans, but not everybody in the room. If you miss a Grand Prix because it's on in the middle of the night or you're away traveling, must you watch it, or do you think there's another one coming? Kimberly, you would. And I often these days think I don't need to watch that. I'll just watch either the highlights or I'll read Mark Hughes' story on the race or motorsport. So I think that's also part of it, which is that, maybe it's not going to increase the viewership. Doesn't really matter if it increases the following through Apple somehow. So that's a good way of avoiding a direct answer.
On the veranda at the back, our last question. Yes?
So everybody remembers who the champion was every year. But I bet no one could sort of say, who won the Constructors' Championship in 2015? So why do we focus on the Constructors' Championship at all?
We don't. The people that do are those that didn't win the Drivers' Championship. Right? It's true, isn't it? And by the way, they should. McLaren communicates world champions, constructors. And that's good because that's what they're supposed to do. And they did win the constructors, and there's 1,000 people in Woking working, and if you can motivate them, we're champions. But you know that if this year they win the Drivers' Championship, they won't be talking that much about the constructors, probably. So,
even though the payments made on the basis of construction.
I'm sure they care about the money, and I'm sure that individuals also motivated directly for that, for the income to the team. But as Ed says, what we all care about, and you said, you know, we can all remember that Lewis Hamilton won the World Championship in 2008. I don't know whether McLaren won the Constructors that year, and I don't really care, right? I don't. Karun Chandok would know the answer to all these things. He would know. When you said 2015, he would have gone, ugh!
And Lewis Hamilton was in a Mercedes.
Yeah. Was it Mercedes? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right, okay, we are now sort of running out of time. Matthew, let's round up the final question. Who is going to win it?
I could see it on your face.
Because we want to ask you back, so we'll say you're wrong. Whoa, he's having a think.
What I love about this situation is that it reminded me of what I do believe is one of the great things about Formula One, is that most people have people they like, that maybe they saw coming up. You know, I have a soft spot for Lando. I watched him in Formula 3, right? And George the same, but also I love the underdog. When somebody deserves to do well or doesn't, you know, I want that person to do well or not. And so I really want Max to win it now. But I would also like Lando to win it. And I think Lando's probably got the, you know, between the two McLarens, Oscar's got the points advantage, Lando's got everything else. And if he can put it together and be awake at restarts, I think he can win it. On the other hand, it's Max Verstappen and Red Bull doing this, so I wouldn't sleep well.
Oh, well, there we have the forecast from the expert. Matthew, as always, great pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you here.
Great to have you here. And as always, nobody leaves the FCC without adding to their collection of crockery.
Thank you very much.
Have an FCC mug.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.